New tonight, Trudeau threatening Trump, the outgoing Canadian Prime Minister warning President Trump of immediate retaliation to Trump's executive order late yesterday. That order slapped a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum.
Tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum would be entirely unjustified. If it comes to that, our response, of course.
The United States has taken the absurd decision to harm its own people at a time when its economy is suffering the deepest crisis.
Imagine walking into a grocery store and seeing shelves stripped of American products, coffee shops refusing to serve U.S. brands, and restaurants proudly promoting Canadian-only menus. That's exactly what's happening right now, and here's where it gets even crazier. This isn't just a small protest, it's a full-scale economic rebellion. What started as frustration over U.S. tariffs has turned into something much bigger. This is a movement, and if you think this is just about switching brands, think again, because what happens next could change everything.
I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives.
It all started when the U.S. announced a 25% tariff on Canadian goods with an extra 10% on energy exports. This move, designed to pressure Canada into trade concessions, had the opposite effect. Instead of backing down, Canadians got angry, and instead of waiting for politicians to fix the issue, they decided to take action themselves.
Now, keep in mind, the United States buys more steel and aluminum from Canada than anywhere else in the world. A quarter of all U.S. steel imports come from Canada. And Trump's tariff, which again, he's already signed an executive order, is set to take effect on March 12th. Out front now, Chrystia Freeland. She was Canada's Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister under Trudeau until she resigned in December, and she is now one of the front runners to replace him in this next election. So, Chrystia, I so much appreciate your time. When you hear that warning from Prime Minister Trudeau, who of course is on his way out, and then all of this has blown up after that was announced, will it make President Trump think twice about these new tariffs that are in the executive order?
The message was clear. If the U.S. wants to hurt Canada's economy, Canada will hit back where it counts in the American brands that rely on Canadian shoppers.
Well, it should. The Prime Minister is absolutely right. These tariffs are illegal, they are unjustified, and crucially, Aaron, they are self-mutilating for the United States. They're going to hurt the U.S. really badly. And we know that because it's not the first time this has happened. In 2018, the United States imposed tariffs of 25% on Canadian steel, 10% on Canadian aluminum. And in 2019, the U.S. dropped those tariffs.
Right now, social media is exploding with posts of all Canadian grocery hauls. Online communities, once small, are growing into massive groups with over 500,000 members. Everywhere, people were swapping out American products for Canadian alternatives. And this wasn't just about skipping Starbucks or choosing a different brand of cereal. This was about national pride. It was about sending a loud and clear message that Canada won't be pushed around.
And also because we did as the Prime Minister said we would do. We retaliated, dollar for dollar retaliation, and it hurt. You know, I think you guys sometimes think Canada, well, actually, I don't think Americans think about Canada all that often, which is fine with us. But what you should remember is we are actually your largest market. We are larger than China, Japan, the UK, and France combined.
Retailers quickly caught on. Grocery stores started rearranging shelves to highlight Canadian products. Independent businesses rolled out Made in Canada labels, making it easier for shoppers to support homegrown goods. Restaurants and cafes joined in, promoting locally sourced ingredients and cutting ties with U.S. suppliers. The movement grew at lightning speed, and just when you thought it couldn't get any bigger, the Canadian government stepped in.
I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods. This will include immediate tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods as of Tuesday, followed by further tariffs on $125 billion worth of American products in 21 days' time to allow Canadian companies and supply chains to seek to find alternatives.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, refusing to bow to U.S. pressure, announced counter tariffs targeting key American industries. The strategy was simple: hit the U.S. where it hurts. Canada's plan includes tariffs on Florida's orange juice, Kentucky's bourbon, and other products from politically sensitive states. This isn't just about economics, it's a political chess game designed to put pressure on American lawmakers who rely on exports to Canada.
That you're drawing here. You posted a very direct warning. You're saying this here, but on social media yesterday, you spoke directly to Trump. Let me just play it for anyone who hasn't seen it.
I have a message today for President Trump. If you force our hand, we will inflict the biggest trade blow that the United States has ever endured.
What does that trade blow look like if you're the next prime minister?
Dollar for dollar retaliation. Any tariff imposed on Canada, Canada will respond to, and our response is going to be smart and targeted. The tariffs the U.S. is threatening Canada with are across the board.
And if you think that's shocking, wait until you see this. Some officials are even threatening to cut energy exports to the U.S. Canada is the largest supplier of crude oil to America, and its electricity powers large parts of the northeastern U.S. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has floated the idea of shutting down energy exports as a bargaining tool. If Canada pulls the plug, millions of Americans could see their energy prices skyrocket over.
Aluminum is basically electricity in solid form, and in imposing a 25% tariff on Canadian aluminum, you're hurting yourselves. You're putting a 25% tax on electricity, and you actually need more electricity today in this AI race with China.
Yep.
Our retaliation is going to be a lot more surgical than that. We are going to go after American stakeholders who matter to the White House. I have proposed a 100% tariff on all Teslas. I am calling on all the countries that are affected by this tariff.
But here's where things get tricky. While the movement is growing, some experts are warning that this boycott could backfire. The US and Canada aren't just neighbors, they're deeply connected. Many American brands rely on Canadian workers and resources. Some factories in Canada produce American products. Some US companies source materials from Canadian farms. If Canadians stop buying American goods entirely, it could hurt Canadian jobs without people realizing it.
And our retaliation will target specific Trump constituencies. Another group that we're going to go after is Wisconsin dairy farmers. We know how important they are for the president, and we're not going to let them sell their products in Canada anymore. But I also want to say to you, Aaron, we don't have to do this.
Yeah.
We have a balanced, mutually beneficial relationship with the United States. We think the best path is to continue with that relationship. I was Canada's lead negotiator the last time Trump was president, and we had a lot of fighting and a lot of insults.
Let me be clear. In imposing these tariffs, the United States has taken the absurd decision to harm its own people at a time when its economy is suffering the deepest crisis since the Great Depression. Any American who buys a can of beer or of soda, or a car or a bike, will suffer.
One economist, Sylvain Charlebois, put it bluntly: if you just look at the brand name, you might think you're making the right choice, but you could be cutting off Canadian workers without even knowing it. That's the hidden danger. In an effort to punish the US, Canada could end up hurting itself.
But at the end of the day, the tariffs were lifted by the United States. We got a trade agreement that Trump said was the best deal ever. And today, the president campaigned on saying he was going to go after China. He campaigned on saying China is an unfair participant in the global economy and has overcapacity in steel and aluminum. We think the president is right about that. We do not want to have a fight with you. We would prefer to be your partner. and we can be a great partner.
Meanwhile, the U.S. isn't backing down. The tariffs are still set to go into effect, and American officials are watching Canada's response closely. If Canada continues its boycott and launches full-scale counter-tariffs, the U.S. could escalate things even further. Some fear that this could turn into a full-scale trade war, with both sides suffering economic damage. And this is where things go completely off the rails. If Canada cuts energy exports, it could send shockwaves through global markets. If the US retaliates with even more tariffs, Canada's economy could take a massive hit. Some experts predict job losses, higher prices, and economic uncertainty on both sides of the border.
But if you hit us, we're going to have to hit you back.
That's interesting when you talk about you were a lead negotiator. I mean, when this all started, you resigned, he lashed out, he called you totally toxic, not at all conducive to making deals. I'm sure you saw the post. She will not be missed. And of course, you could be coming back as prime minister.
For many Canadians, this isn't just about numbers. It's about something much bigger. It's about proving that Canada won't be bullied. It's about showing that everyday people can fight back against economic pressure. It's about national pride.
Literally just economic acknowledgement of that fact.
Yeah, look, you're American, and you guys will have the best judgments about your political system and who's influential and who isn't. But we listen to you, we listen to your reporting, and we will design our retaliation to target the people who we think are the most influential, the people who, if they are feeling pain from our retaliation, will say to the president, let's not do this anymore. That's the outcome that we want. And by the way, we think that's going to be the best outcome for the U.S. too.
Right. Of course, though, when you point out choose the government, the American people elected Donald Trump, not Elon Musk, but they have them both now, at least the way that it is playing out thus far. Well, Chrystia Freeland, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
The bigger question is whether Canada can afford to go toe-to-toe with the US in an economic war. The truth is, Canada's economy is deeply intertwined with its southern neighbor. Every day, over $3 billion in goods flow across the border, making the US Canada's biggest trading partner. If this dispute spirals further, it could cause massive disruptions to supply chains, manufacturing, and even food production.
We're in a critical moment. As President Trump stated yesterday, he is still committed to placing tariffs on Canada starting as early as tomorrow, possibly. Now, we don't know precisely what that could look like, but I do know two things. First, if the president does choose to implement any tariffs against Canada, we're ready with a response. A purposeful, forceful, but reasonable, immediate response. It's not what we want, but if he moves forward, we will also act. We're ready for whatever scenario comes forward.
And it's not just trade that's at stake. The political landscape is shifting too. Some Canadian leaders are calling for a long-term strategy to make the country less dependent on American goods. The idea is simple. If Canada builds stronger trade relationships with Europe and Asia, it won't be as vulnerable to U.S. economic policies. This could lead to major investments in Canadian manufacturing, energy independence, and homegrown industries. But here's the catch. Reducing reliance on the U.S. won't happen overnight. It would take years of economic restructuring, new trade deals, and massive shifts in consumer behavior. Some experts believe that Canada should push for a negotiated settlement with the U.S. instead of escalating the conflict. Others argue that standing firm now will set a precedent, proving that Canada isn't a country that can be pressured into unfair trade deals.
In more recent times, the Collexit movement has captured headlines. Inspired by the United Kingdom's Brexit decision, a movement called Yes California was founded in 2015 by Louis J. Marinelli, advocating for California's independence from the United States. The movement gained momentum after the 2016 presidential election.
Meanwhile, as politicians debate the next move, ordinary Canadians continue to boycott U.S. products. The movement has already had an impact, with some American companies reporting drops in sales from Canadian customers. Whether this is a temporary protest or a long-term shift remains to be seen.
Is leading a statewide charge for California to secede from the United States. He thinks Californians would be safer and better off without the federal government. Our Brianna Bias spoke with him today to hear his reasoning. All right, Brianna, what does he have to say?
Well, Emily, Marcus Ruiz-Evans wants California to be its own completely independent country. And yes, that means having its own leadership, currency, and military. And as of yesterday, California's Secretary of State officially cleared his initiative so he can begin collecting signatures. What if California was its own country?
We would be more safe.
But one thing is clear, this isn't just about tariffs anymore. It's about control. It's about who gets to call the shots in global trade. And it's about whether a country like Canada can stand up to a global superpower and hold its ground.
Now, what's the process here, and does it have a snowball's chance?
Well, you know, I'm in Dallas, Texas, and a lot of Texans want to Texit. They want us to secede from America, and now that Donald Trump's in power, I don't agree with that. But if California wants to go, California, see you later. I mean, they're doing all kinds of weird gender reassignment surgery for kids. They let biological males compete against biological females, all because they put on a dress for a few periods during class. So, you know, California's gone so crazy, and they're so woke that at this point, let them have their little crazy euphoria where nothing works and everything gets burned down and they can't even, fill up their water reserves to stop a fire. So go ahead. If California wants to become its own country, I'll just let them basically destroy themselves from the inside out.
So what's next? Will Canada and the US make peace before it's too late? Or will this economic war spiral out of control? One thing's for sure, this is just the beginning. And the next few weeks will determine whether this movement is a short-term reaction or the start of a massive shift in global trade. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.